Okay. All righty.
Pam, would you like to dive in?
Oh, sure. Hi, I'm Pam Van Hine. I am the recording secretary for the PAC, and our chair is not here. You can hear me okay? Our chair, Lizzie Gallagher, is not here today because there is COVID in her family, and we miss her dearly. I will be taking over until Eric Goodman, our vice chair, shows up, which is imminent. And welcome, everybody. We're very happy to be co-hosting a backpack meeting. I love the backpack meetings. So go ahead, Cynthia.
I am Cynthia Palmer. I love the backpack meetings as well. Thank you, everybody, for coming. I think we'll start with introductions. We'll just go down the list and everybody can say their name and where they're from, whether they're representing biking or walking. And then if there's something else you'd like to add, now would be a great time for a quick hello or a quick message. So do you want to add anything to that instruction, Pam?
That sounds good. And I live in Aurora Highlands, and I've been with the PAC for 14 years and definitely a pedestrian advocate, but I love bikes too. Don't ride them, but I love them. And cyclists.
Wonderful. So why don't do you want me to go down the list?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, so we have first up, Andrea Walker.
Hi, I'm a member of the PAC, also Commission on Aging, and walking school bus, walker, driver to school for kids at Oak Ridge Elementary. So anyway, okay. I live in Arlington Ridge.
Wonderful. All right, and then Anita Walgren.
Hello, I'm Anita Walgren. I live in Virginia Square. I'm interested in pedestrian safety and all things having to do with quality of life.
Good. We hope you come back to more PAC meetings and join us.
And then we have Brian Shelton.
Hey, good evening, everybody. My name is Brian Shelton. I've attended these meetings in the past before as a intern for Arlington County, but now I am the active transportation planner for Arlington County. Nice to meet you all.
Wonderful. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And now we have Brian De Jesus Lorenzo.
Hi, everyone. I am the new intern for Vision Zero, and this is my first meeting.
Ah, fantastic. Welcome.
Welcome, definitely.
Thank
we
you.
will fight over you.
All right, and Dana Bress is next.
Yeah, hi, Dana Bress. I'm on the Bicycle Advisory Committee, live in Aurora Highlands.
And then David Ansell.
Hi, David Ansell. Been attending BAC meetings for a couple of years. I live in the Dover Crystal area.
Great. David Patton.
Hello, I'm David Patton. I'm a transportation planner for the county, and sort of officially I do counters, yeah.
Right.
Sort of officially the liaison to the PAC committee, but longtime friend of the BAC as well.
Yes, indeed. And now we have Elwin Gonzalez.
Hey everyone, my name is Alan Gonzalez. I'm a transportation planner for Arlington County, DES.
Welcome back. Eric Malpelli.
Hi, Eric Malpelli, PAC, live in the Old Dominion Civic Association area, particularly focused now on Langston Boulevard line, where I'm also on the board. Always happy to be here.
Great. Eric Goodman.
Hi, I'm Eric Goodman. I'm on the PAC and the BAC. I'm the co-chair for the PAC, and I live in the Bluemont neighborhood, and I'm currently walking my bike home so I can help chair this meeting.
Thank you, Eric.
Awesome. Jim Feaster.
Jim Feaster, I'm a member of the Pedestrian Advisory Committee, and I live in Ballston.
Wonderful. Joshua Nicholas.
Hello, I'm Josh Nicholas. Normally, I'm the ITS manager for the county. I'm also acting assistant bureau chief for transportation engineering and operations at the moment. So nice to be here. And I think I'll be talking with you all a little bit through the meeting.
Thank you.
Super. Kevin O'Brien.
Hey y'all, Kevin O'Brien, Virginia organizer with the Washington Area Bicyclist Association. I am neither a formal member of the BAC or the PAC, but a frequent listener in on these meetings.
Thank you. Laura Castro.
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Laura Castro. I'm a planner here with Vision Zero program at Arlington County.
Ah,
Great.
thank you.
Leslie.
Hi, I'm Leslie Tierstein, live in the Penrose neighborhood of Arlington, longtime bicyclist, and I attend BAC meetings.
And Mary Delau.
You're muted.
You're muted, Mary.
Mary.
All right, I'll try that again. So I'm with Bike and Walk Arlington, and I live in Bluemont.
Excellent.
If I might add something, I neglected to put an item in the agenda for a report from Mary. Mary manages the Bike and Walk Arlington programs, and it might be good to hear from her tonight.
Great. Noreen.
We're getting feedback.
Oh, from me?
From David.
Well, I'm Noreen Hannigan, real quick. I'm on the Bicycle Advisory Committee, and I'm on the Forestry and Natural Resources Commission, and I live in Dominion Hills.
Wonderful. Patrick.
Good evening, Patrick Kenny. I live in Ballston, and I'm a member of the PAC.
Great. And Randy.
Good evening. I'm Randy Swart. I live in Barcroft neighborhood, and I am famously not a member of the BAC.
Great. Tom Corns.
Yeah, hi, Randy. I'm as a founder of the PAC, actually. I was frustrated as a planning commissioner for many years by having site plan go by without getting proper pedestrian decisions made. So anyway, I've been around since the beginning and still here. And I live in Cherrydale and spend a lot of time on as a steward on the Cherrydale County Park.
Fabulous. All right. And then we have a phone number that ends with 05.
Hello, my name is Natasha Pinole. This is my very first meeting with PAC. I am a former neighborhood conservation representative with ARCA, Arlington Ridge, and I live in Arlington Ridge, Forest Hills. I am on the Forest Hills Landscape and Grounds Committee, and there are 3 issues that we'd like to discuss if possible. And thank you very much for the invitation.
Yeah, you had contacted Arthur?
Yes.
Yeah, if we could give her like 2 minutes, either before we get started or at the end. Yeah, she has an interesting issue that I tried to help her with. A pedestrian issue and a biking issue.
Thank you very much.
So why don't we keep moving ahead with the agenda, and then we will, when we cover like committee business at the end, that would be a good time to intervene. And Natasha, what was your last name?
Pinol, P as in Paul, I-N-O-L.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Did I miss anybody in the list?
No, but Cynthia, I see Jim Feaster's hand is raised. Maybe.
Oh, okay.
Yes, let me just, did I count 5 staff members from the county but in addition to David Patton? Are there 6 employees of the county on our meeting today?
You're not a budget analyst, are you, Jim?
No, I'm impressed.
Oh, speaking of speakers, do we have our legislative person coming? Is she here yet?
She
Ilana?
won't be joining us. Ilana
Yeah.
won't be joining us until late. She has
Great.
another meeting tonight, so she's splitting her time.
Okay, so that'll be another one, Jim.
So why don't we jump into the first item, which is planning for future maintenance of transportation discussions. And Dana Bress has prepared some materials from the Bicycle Advisory Committee. Dana, are you here?
I think he just pinged in.
Hell, I don't know what. Okay, are we there?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so MOTs exist to mitigate the problems of construction on both pedestrians and cyclists as well as motorists. I'm getting feedback here. Are we still there? So we've looked at it in a piecemeal form a number of times, and basically the county staff has said we don't have a lot of people, we don't have a lot of time, it's really hard to manage, and this is what we get. And Leah a few years ago a report a problem issue where she posted a report a problem feature where you could record these MOT problems. The problem was there was no real evidence of resolution. So given that as the background, we have a lot of projects and many projects which abut other projects, and we need to look at the process a lot more holistically. So I sent out a document yesterday with my thoughts, exclusively mine, and I'm eager to get your input. And we would tweak this document and then send it to the county with the intent of getting a discussion going, as opposed to, we're concerned about the use of traffic cones, or we're concerned about some little trivial aspect. We want to look at this more holistically. And then what I'll do is I'll integrate the things, and then we can review it again before we send it to the county, either BAC, PAC, or jointly. So, have at it. All I'd ask is do red line strikeout, color type, whatever you want to do. There, 4 minutes, Pam.
Do we have a timeline in terms of when you'd like feedback on the document? And also, has everybody received the document or only the BAC?
It went out to the 120 people on the BAC listserv.
Okay.
So I guess the answer is probably not. But Dave, if you could send it to the PAC listserv.
I could. I don't think I received it. So
Okay.
if you copy me, send it to me, I can figure that out with Pam and Eric and distribute it to the PAC and the PAC list.
Well, I also sent it to Pam, so maybe she could do it.
That would work for me.
And do we have a timeline?
How about getting me some comments by the end of the month? I'm out of the country in October.
So does that give you enough time to integrate the comments?
I can give it a good shot, or we'll do it as part of the November BAC.
Okay.
This has languished for 4 years, so so what's another 2 months?
Got it. So does anyone have questions, concerns, issues to raise? I see Eric's hand. Oh, I see Randy's hand too. Wait, Eric or Randy, whoever wants to jump in first.
Go ahead, Eric.
All right. Dana, yeah, I have not had a chance to see what you wrote, so I really don't know what your specific issues are. But this has been an issue for a long time in the PAC as well. I mean, one of the things is just getting in touch with people. One of the big issues that we've been trying to work out, we thought it would be a very simple thing, was just to have a means for somebody who sees that there's an issue with the maintenance of transportation or the to be able to call somebody and at least contact somebody. There's a lot of times you walk by a construction site, there's no way to contact anybody to find out what's going on. I know you've also raised concerns about transparency and being able to see what the actual maintenance of transportation, what that document looks like, and it's not something that's very easily accessible. So certainly understand that. But I'm just saying this has been sort of an ongoing issue with us in the county for many years. Just to even be able to contact somebody, to get an inspector out to see where the violation is happening. So all right, that's all I had. I will pass it on to Randy.
Let me say that I have never seen anything that comprehensive on MOTs before. It just blew me away. I don't know how in the world Dana had found the time to think of all those things, much less put them all down. He does address everything that you've raised, Eric, including how should people be able to contact very quickly the people who should be out there policing the MOT. Anyway, I think everybody needs to read it. It won't help at all if you don't read it first. So please get it out and read it, and I think you'll be impressed. Thank you.
Well, I jotted a note to myself that the BAC and PAC, need to create a decision framework for their engagement. So the county knows, do we engage them or not? If they give them to us, if they give us every one of them, we aren't going to have time to do them. But we need to be able to tell them what the ones that are really important. A series of flowcharts.
All right, anyone else, or shall we move on? Thank you so much, Dana, for putting that together. It is really, I mean, like Randy says, it's a tremendous document, incredibly comprehensive and quite a fascinating read. It doesn't sound like it is, but you will get drawn in if you start looking at that thing. All right, so why don't we move on in the agenda? And our next topic, is the big one. So we're going to talk about signals policy as it affects bicycle riding and walking in Arlington. And our guest speaker is Josh Nicholas, Traffic Engineering Manager, Transportation Engineering and Operations. And I believe he told us he also has another title for now. And I guess I'll start this part of the meeting with a big thank you to Joshua and his team for fixing the signals at 16th Street and George Mason, right by the hospital. That is a location I ride through regularly, and in recent weeks, I have been grinning my way through it because I can see that the signal detects me, and I'm just so thrilled to be detected at that location now. So why don't we get started? Joshua Nicholas, and we sent lots and lots of materials, sorry, in advance. So, so you're overwhelmed, I'm sure, before even coming here. But we're so pleased to have you.
Sure. Thank you for the introduction. Appreciate the shout out for George Mason and 16th. It's good that we can detect you. I took the list of questions that you all sent me, and rather than going through kind of one at a time, I think there's some common themes that go. I'm sorry if I keep looking over here, but I have like 3 screens, so you all are over here, and the presentation's over here. But I have a couple slides to go through and give you a quick background on what's going on and how things are operating in the field. And that way we can kind of have a discussion at the end if there's anything I leave off or forget to go over. So is it okay if I take over the screen and present?
Yes, go right ahead.
Okay. Okay. I think you all are seeing it now, right?
Yes.
Is it just, it's not appearing on my computer. Hold on one second.
And Josh, if you hit full screen, then the actual content will be relatively larger. Or slideshow, maybe.
There we go. Is that coming up?
We see the slides, but also sidebars on left and right.
Okay, hold on. Let me try one more time. It's probably on the wrong screen. Okay, how about now?
Yes, that's better.
Okay. All right, sorry. Let me go back to the beginning. So the team that I work on is traffic engineering and operations. We do a lot of different things. Vision Zero is within this team also. And the signals and ITS portion of that team does traffic signals, but also a lot of the roadside beacons. And we consider those types of signaling devices. So RFBs, speed indicators, school zone flashers, all that stuff is under the same umbrella. So that's kind of in the same group. And then this is just a quick map showing where the signals are and how they're connected in the county. Right now we have just over 300 signals countywide in various states of modernization. All of them are connected with fiber, which is great, which means we have a good handle on what's going on there. We can communicate to the signal. We can bring back a camera feed so we can monitor that kind of stuff. So we have a very robust communications network, which helps us leverage technology quickly. And then this slide is an example of some of those deployments of the ITS devices and things that we're running. So it's kind of a hard map to read, but the little rectangles, the blue rectangles are speed indicators. The squares, the pink squares are rapid flash beacons. And the rest of the stuff are, there are different technologies that we have at the signal. So things like Bluetooth data collection, which is just telling us how traffic is working on the arterials as far as travel times and consistency day to day, making sure that there's no weird variation, because usually that means something is mistimed or incorrect. And I'm sorry, I can't read the chat at the same time. Let me see. Oh, okay. So we have lots of things deployed throughout the field. So I think the main theme of the questions that I received were really tying back to the technology that we use, the policies that we use to operate those things, and then why we're doing what we're doing. That was kind of a common theme through all of it. So a lot of the things that we do now at the newer intersections are not possible at some of the older intersections that have not been touched in 60 years as far as a major rebuild. So I wanted to kind of show how those different projects come about and how we develop our pipeline for modernizing the infrastructure. And there's basically 4 big buckets of projects that new signals get put into. When development comes through, for example, if their site plan is impacting an intersection, or if the development itself necessitates a new signal, it's usually included in the developer's work for the site plan. So we get a lot of new rebuilds that way. Some recent examples would be Met Park and Crystal City, or the American Legion site over near Clarendon. A lot of different developers will wind up rebuilding the intersection to bring things up to ADA and to replace things that they're impacting with their undergrounding. The next bucket is more of a capital program for the transportation as a whole. So those are the larger capital projects where we're rebuilding roads or changing things around. And as part of that, we would usually include signals if it makes sense to deliver that at the same time as the roadway improvements. And then TE&O, which is our bureau, we lead our own designs for things that are really targeted for infrastructure replacements. So if there's something that we don't see any capital projects or developments coming, but we know that it's in rough shape and we want to get it replaced, we take those on ourselves and we deliver those. And usually they're a little bit more limited in scope. Like we wouldn't necessarily chase a roadway improvement down the block or, modify the roadway in a major way. And then the last bucket is a lot less common, but it does happen where a larger agency like VDOT or even FHWA will have a very big regional project that does include county signals. So some recent examples of that are the Hot Lanes I-66, the Defense Access Road project down on Columbia Pike at the east end of Columbia Pike, for example. That one will be delivering 2 or 3 new signals. And each of these projects is costing around $500,000 to $700,000 for a signal replacement. So if you picture an old signal getting replaced by a new signal, that's probably on the low end. Actually, it's probably, if it gets bid out, it's probably around $600,000 to $800,000. And right now, as we speak, there are about 30 plus intersections throughout the county in all 4 of these buckets combined that are rebuilding infrastructure. So I wanted to stress that because some of the things we're going to talk about rely on that delivery of new infrastructure in order to accommodate some of the goals of mobility and safety. All right, so this is, I think, going to get to the nitty gritty of the questions. So in signal timing terms, when we're talking about how a traffic signal operates, we use the term actuation to refer to an action that achieves an objective or a way to place a call. So if there's a movement or a phase that we call at the intersection that is not automatically cycled, to activate it, there needs to be some kind of action taken so that the brain of the intersection knows to service that phase. So that would be a call. So you can either have a passive actuation, which is the person doesn't have to do anything. So like if you picture cars, when you drive up to an intersection, you don't have to honk your horn for it to change. So that's passive detection because the signal knows you're there and it calls your phase. It services your movement and it'll come up without you doing anything. Active would be pushing a push button. So that's a good example. If you go up to the intersection and the movement that you're trying to activate is not automatic, it would require you to actively press the button in order to bring up the walk phase. So that's active actuation. So I kind of summarize that a little bit. You know, vehicles, typically we do that with cameras mounted overhead or through loops embedded in the pavement. And those are both passive so that vehicles don't have to do anything. And for bicycles, it's a little trickier because the bicycle can approach the intersection on the roadway, in lane, off the roadway in a bike lane, or off the roadway in a shared use path, or in a crosswalk as a pedestrian. So there's a lot of different ways a bicycle can approach the intersection. So it depends how they approach the intersection, but if they're in the lane, you can detect them with cameras. If they're off street, it's more of an active approach with push buttons, for example, like a shared use. Actually, it's a bad example because all of our shared use paths are in recall. So there shouldn't be any shared use path off of recall. So if you're on a bike on a path or a trail, you shouldn't have to push the button. But for example, if you were riding your bike on the sidewalk and you wanted to activate a phase, you would have to push the button if it's not on a recall. And just for reference, I know I'm going really fast, but just for reference on let's say a main road like Glebe, for example, and a more minor street like 16th, or let's use George Mason and 16th. So George Mason would be the main line and 16th is the side street. Usually all of the phases associated with the main line will automatically cycle. So it'll rest in the main line until there's a call on the side street. And the side street call can come from vehicle, pedestrian, whatever it does, that triggers the cycle of the light. So that's kind of a brief primer on how the signal processes those calls, whether it's through detection or not. And here's an example. This is a screenshot from one of our newer video detection cameras above the roadway. And just pointing out on here, I don't know if you can see my mouse, but this green rectangle is a zone. So we draw the zones in lane and it has a little symbol in the front of the bike. So if there's a bike in here, it'll light up and we know it's a bike. If it's a vehicle, it'll turn green. So you can see over here, there's a zone and there's a purple bicycle or a pink bicycle. So it knows there's a bike here waiting. So there's really no need for the bikes to do anything. They're detected. If there was a pedestrian coming and they wanted to push the button, they would be, we're testing out this intersection, but they would push the button and then they could go. So the difference in the camera capabilities versus pedestrians and bicycles and things like that in the roadway is kind of important to understand because this technology is relatively recent. So a lot of the intersections, not a lot, I would say, more of the newer recently built intersections in the last 10 to 15 years, 10 years probably, yeah, last 10 years do include cameras. So it is a large number, it's just not all of them. And, the guidance on the active pedestrian push buttons, the placement, the operations, how far they are from the road, how much space you need around them, what the height is, how long they have to function, what type of functionality is built into the technology. It's all very much laid out in both ProWag and the MUTCD. There's not a lot left up to the imagination on the push buttons as far as where they need to go and how they need to operate. So we comply with these as best we can, especially in new construction. It's our job to make sure that designs comply with this and that the placement of these devices is per these guidelines. So if you see here, this is actually a diagram from ProWag, the newer update. And in the M and the P, those are the two differences between the MUTCD, which is the federal documentation and guidelines, and the newer ProWag, which is 2023. And you can see they pretty much agree on almost everything. There's a couple more prescriptive distances in the ProWag, but generally, in general, it's pretty consistent with what has been in the MUTCD since 2009. So there's not a lot of physical changes to the layout that are different. It's pretty similar. And for push buttons, you know, I highlighted sort of the newer capability of the video detection systems. On the newer push buttons, they are improving technology on these. Some of the newer ones, you wave at them. They also, some of the newer models will have applications that people can use to navigate that have, for example, you know, visual.
We've lost you, Josh. It's gone
I
mute.
think
Can't hear you.
Yeah, you may be muted.
Joshua, can you hear us? We cannot hear you.
You've gone mute, Josh.
I don't think he's hit mute because we would see an icon if he did. I think something's wrong with his computer.
We can't hear you.
Don't know how to raise him.
Can you take over and make him stop sharing his screen? That might get his attention.
I could do that. I'm going to do that. I'm going to commandeer the screen.
He's frozen.
How long was that?
That was about a minute, Josh.
Okay, I think this thing died. Sorry. One second.
We got your attention though.
I don't think my headset's used to me talking for this long. It just goes to sleep.
Okay. So
All right.
you want to carry on? Go ahead and take the screen back.
All right, sorry. Okay, so should I go back one or you good?
I think you were
Go back,
where
please.
you talked about ProWag was where
Okay.
you were good to the
At the end of the ProWag thing. You were
Okay.
moving on past the ProWag.
The next one you showed of the close-up of the push button, that's where you went dark. There we
Okay,
go.
sorry about that. I'm trying to see three things. So I've got it now. All right. So the use of technology and push buttons, this is kind of where I was trying to show some of the newer the overhead camera detection capabilities. On the push buttons, it's sort of the same story. The technology is constantly changing. So, you know, some of these newer push buttons have things like where you can wave at them. You don't need to touch them. You know, that came as a result probably of COVID, or they were working on that before COVID and it just became a little bit more spread out after COVID. And some of these also have support for Bluetooth applications where people with visual disabilities, they can sort of use their phone to navigate using the Bluetooth on the push button itself. So it'll talk back to their application that they're running on their phone. So these are kind of newer applications that are rolling out slowly as the technology improves and as things get better with push buttons. So the reason I'm kind of harping on that is that a lot of these capabilities are tied to things that require some retrofit. The Vision Zero program and how it relates to signal timings and operations, I would say, we are fully integrated with the goals and operations of the Vision Zero team. So a lot of the tools in the toolbox are implemented by our team. We provide feedback. We're involved in the critical crash evaluations, the hotspot studies, different things. Our team's involved in pretty much all the evaluations they do and things like that. So we really try to take a systematic approach to implementing the tools in the toolbox to specifically address safety issues as countermeasures. And then I saw a lot of questions on the list dealing with LPIs. So LPIs, there are about 80 intersections with LPIs in the county. You can kind of see that map. I'm sorry, it's so small. It's mostly Roslyn Ballston through here and Columbia Pike, and then some other locations based on heavy turning movement conflicts or specific
Are
studies.
you trying to show us a map? Because we don't see one.
It's kind of in the top right corner of the slide. Oops.
I see it.
Yeah, I can probably.
There we go.
Yeah, so this is sort of Roslyn, Ballston, and then down here is Columbia Pike. And then there's some, schools and various locations over here where there were either trail crossings or heavy conflicts with turns, things like that, specific spot studies that were done. So you can kind of see the layout of what's going on there. So with LPIs, there are some challenges to implementing these. And generally, we're talking about a 3 to 5 second head start on conflicting traffic. So that's usually about enough time to get across one lane is the goal. And that's typical, throughout some of the literature reviews, there's ranges and things like that. But usually you don't want to give too much of an LPI so that it leads to violations and things like that, or just unexpected movements. So that head start's enough time for a pedestrian to react, get out in front of the vehicles as far as like getting in their line of sight, going out one lane, and then you bring up the rest of the phase. So that's kind of the strategy we're using. There are places where we will implement a longer LPI, Route 29 westbound in Lynn, for example, is a good one. I know there was a question on that one too. But when we deploy this tool from the toolbox, there are other considerations that kind of go with it. Like, for example, usually you would want no turn on red associated with the LPI implemented at the same time. So we need to make sure that we implement that restriction. The other thing is it can be challenging for people that rely on traffic noise to navigate. Again, visual impairments or things like that, where you're relying on the the noise of traffic parallel to you to navigate the intersection. On the newer intersections, we have things like the APS push buttons that'll talk to you and tell you when the walk sign is on. So that kind of diminishes that's kind of a great backstop for the LPIs. So we do that. The preference is when an LPI goes in, no turn on red goes in, and the push buttons are audible. Now, like I said before, because there are such strict or prescriptive guidelines on where the push buttons have to be, sometimes it's just not feasible with the existing pole layout to get those in a place that's going to make sense for the users. So, some of the older intersections where, for example, there's a span wire pole and it's sitting behind a bush, or whatever, it wouldn't really make sense to put a push button on that, and to put new poles and things like that, it's usually the scope creeps up to a bigger, for example, signal replacement project. So those are kinds of things that we consider when we're looking at the feasibility of putting in APS alongside LPIs. It doesn't mean we won't put an LPI out without a APS. It just means that we're definitely considering it when we evaluate everything. Okay, so then, for Jeopardy fans, we have the signal potpourri. These are the random questions from David that were sent to me that I have answers for on hand. And if I forget any, please, we can do it in the Q&A. So Columbia Pike and 4 Mile Run, yes, it should be in recall. All trail crossings should be in recall. You shouldn't have to push the button. We did check. I had them check it before this meeting, and there was a database rollback that shouldn't have happened. So we've undone the rollback. So we've rolled forward and made sure that there's special notes in the system so nobody accidentally does that again. So that should be the case. So if you see a trail crossing and it's not in recall and you feel like you have to push the button, you know, you can go ahead and submit a public stuff request or a report a problem. It's called report a problem now. Put in a report a problem for that, and we can look at it and make sure that it gets put into recall if it for some reason gets removed. The no turn on red LED or it's actually a no right turn LED at Lynn and Route 29 westbound. The problem with turning that on a little bit earlier is that there's a mandatory clearance between the end of the Lynn Street phase and the beginning of the, I guess it would be the I-66 off-ramp phase, which is where the walk signal is coming up with. So that buffer time, I'm pretty sure the request to turn it on earlier is because vehicles might start turning during those 3 seconds. So there is a mandatory buffer between the end of one phase and the start of a PED phase. So we can't really activate the sign because on the hardware side in the signal, it crosses a barrier that's put in to prevent the signal from accidentally servicing conflicting phases. So it's really a phasing issue. You can't really have something go across one phase and another that's going to conflict. It'll cause a problem with the fail-safe of the hardware. So that's why it can't come a little bit earlier. I think what we're talking about is the 3 seconds, if I'm understanding the question. And then the next one, Shirlington Road and 4 Mile Run. There is a capital project there that will improve the crossings and the ramps and make the distance shorter on the 4 Mile Run crosswalk. We did also look at no turn on red, I believe. We installed some of those, I think, for southbound and for eastbound. And then during that, the entire capital project for the that area, there was a pedestrian bridge being built there, and I know that, you know, I wasn't leading that project, but I do know there was a lot of discussion at the time about the RFB. Should it stay there? Should it move? Should it be replaced with something? Should it shift up? Should it just be removed completely, and then people use the signal? But ultimately, I think back and forth, they decided to keep the RFB because the location was pretty valuable where it was, as far as being right at the trail end on the Alexandria side. And so there it remains. And I think that the the recent changes to the legislation as far as the stop and yield to pedestrians should help with that, hopefully, to make it more of a strict compliance issue there. But I understand there are a lot of challenges with that RFB, especially with the traffic queuing from the interstate and that kind of thing. Oh, and I'll save this one if we have time, but I'm not going to answer the specific question about 18th and Route 1. I think the question was, we need a barn stance there. That's not my place to say yes or no, but I think the general discussion of the barn stance and how it operates and how it would operate on Route 1 is very important. And I think that VDOT will be focusing on that in the upcoming design cycles and public outreach. But if we have time, I'd like to talk through it with you all, because I know that this is something that's important, and it's also a little nuanced in how we frame it. So now let's I can stop talking if you all want to talk, or you want me to go down the list of stuff I see in the chat.
Would you like to talk about the barn stance right now? I mean, that is a priority for this committee. So
Sure.
Now that we've got the slide up, maybe we should go forward.
Sure. I can go through sort of the general operations and how there are certain things to consider in both the barn stance and something like like a longer LPI for all the approaches, like if you did a 10-second LPI or something like that. So in a barn stance in general, all of the crosswalks and diagonal crossings will come up at the same time. The other shoe on that foot is that during the rest of the cycle, none of these crosswalks would be active. So you would have your exclusive phase, and then these would drop out, so that the vehicle phase would go one direction, then the other, or whatever the rest of the cycle phasing is. And then you would have your exclusive phase to service all of the movements at once. So that does provide a very good connection for you know, people that are trying to make multiple crossings, but sometimes it does limit which crosswalks you can bring up with the corresponding vehicle traffic. And it depends on the location and what the goals are for the vehicle movements. So which turns are restricted, that kind of thing. That does provide you some flexibility. And then the other thing, the other option is called, the barn stance is more implying that you can cross diagonally. There's also an exclusive ped phase, which would mean all the crosswalks are up, but the diagonals don't go. And the benefits to that are just that you might not have to time as much of the cycle for this longer pedestrian path, and you might be able to shorten the overall cycle length so that the time between the pedestrian things getting served is dropped, so that the delay is less sometimes. So it really is an interesting problem, because you have a certain pie, and out of that pie, the portion of time that each crossing is active is important for delay and for safety. So there are major benefits to not having any vehicles turning during the ped phase, for sure. But it also depends on where you are and what conflicting movements we're talking about. If there's no left turns allowed, that could reduce sort of some of the benefits that are offered by the barn stance, because now you can bring up longer LPIs to mitigate the rights, and then you can bring the crosswalks up more often. So, I think that and then there are other concerns, from an ADA perspective, if the intersection is protected. So for example, 15th and Eads, for example, that one is a protected intersection. And how do you accommodate ADA, like for the diagonal crossings, and how do you signalize that, and how do you convey that message to people that might depend on some of the APS features and things like that? So there are challenges, but there are major benefits to doing it. So, in general, I think that there's merits, and it's a good thing to discuss and talk through on each specific design, for sure.
Pam, did you have follow-up questions?
Thank you, Joshua. That was very helpful. And do you have any sense, or at this point in time, how long the overall cycle would need to be, and how long would be car only versus ped only, if it's a barn stance versus the ped only phases?
I don't want to commit to a number, because it's not, it's not our design.
Yeah, yeah.
And they're still in process of working everything out. But generally, rule of thumb on Route 1, those cycle lengths right now today get up to as high as, I think, 145. So almost more than 2 minutes for the cycle length, and in the peak hours.
Mm-hmm.
And the phasing at 18th Street will be in that design is pretty straightforward, and you can kind of infer from there what the split would be. But you don't have any turning movements. You just have concurrent north-south and then east-west vehicle phases, and then you would have your ped movement. So
Yeah, there will be right turns, but no left turns.
Correct. In
Yeah.
the current proposed
in the
design, there's no
yeah,
lefts.
right. And I don't think they can change it. There is the space.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you. Oh, I did have one question. You talked briefly about Shirlington Road and 4 Mile Run Drive, and our main concern is really Shirlington Road and the trail crossing. You mentioned it briefly, but that's the real danger, is the trail crossing.
So you're the one going across Shirlington Road?
Yeah, with the flashing beacon that doesn't stop anybody.
Okay, yeah, that RFB in the middle, basically between the two signals, right?
Between the
Yeah.
gas station and the Weenie Beanie side.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. So I'm reading through, and again, yeah, the capital project does. I'm not as familiar with the ins and outs of the various capital projects. I think there's several at that location, maybe two or three active projects. So there's one where the pedestrian bridge is being placed, and then there's another where they're modifying the intersection and the crosswalks there. So I think the your best bet for information on that is through the capital program, but I can follow up on that and see if they're proposing anything for the actual beacon area itself.
That would be terrific. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Thank you. We would like them to fix the signaling, and they are focusing on the bridge that does not cross over Shirlington Road. I mean, it's a giant capital project, but it doesn't address these issues, and they're also focusing on the sidewalks. But again, it's the crossing that is so dangerous.
I think if I remember correctly, the bridge project might be widening the median, but I don't recall off the top of my head. I'd have to look back through.
Yeah, but they will still have the 2 lanes on each side and the same signaling and the cars rushing to get through their green lights or whatever they're rushing for. So there have been many close calls, and it's just with that massive, beautiful new playground, it just seems like trouble waiting to happen. I see Jillian's hand.
Yeah, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. The while we're at that location, and I put this in the chat, I noticed the other night when I was biking through there, I don't like using the RFB. I use the east side of Shirlington Road to get to the traffic light, which is what I instruct my kids to do, and I thought was the safest way. And then last night I realized that I'm biking along, looking around, everything's great, and this big truck is barreling at me, like full speed. And I'm like, what the hell? And then I look and I realize the driver of the truck is looking at a green light. And I look around and I realize I have no pedestrian signal. And I am shocked that this is allowed to happen and that there haven't been more issues here. But it's the truck was coming out of the gas station that is directly across from the end of 4 Mile Run Drive. And there's no PED signal. And this isn't the first time I've seen this in Arlington, but this is the most dangerous place I've ever seen this. So I hope that would be a priority, because that's such a dangerous situation, because someone on a sidewalk without a signal has the right of way, except someone with a green light has the right of way.
Yeah, that's not good.
Jillian,
I'll look
this
into
is
that.
Mary. I know exactly where you're talking about. And when I was out running once, the exact same thing happened to me with a truck and that gas station. And I was completely not expecting him. And it was like super scary. So I know exactly the spot. And it's same thing happened to me.
And,
Yeah.
and Jillian, this is Collier. There used to be ones there, but they got wiped out by concrete trucks that made turns. And so you look around, you can see the remnants in the sidewalk where they used to be on both sides, but they were knocked down years ago.
Yeah, they should be there. So
Okay, I would just
not be.
But I would hope that this would be a priority of the county to put them back and put signs up, because I mean, literally, if I had been 30 seconds later, no, 10 seconds later, I would not be here right now. And no one would have been at fault. The county would have 100% been at fault for designing an intersection, for allowing an intersection like that to be.
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you.
I see.
All right, so I'm looking for more hands. I know that we all have lots of issues.
I see a question about the Barnes dance. What is the longest interval between the Barnes dance phase before you start losing compliance? Is that what it, can you clarify that a little bit?
That's essentially pedestrian compliance when they
Right.
realize, you know, this is getting too long, and then they start taking chances.
Yeah, there's some research into that. Like NACTO, for example, has some guidance on that, but I don't know. It's that's a difficult question to answer because it depends on, you know, the roadway and the volume of users and things like that. But you're right. If you're asking somebody to stand on one place for, you know, uh, over a minute and then not move until it comes up, if they're not trying to go diagonally, you know, you might see that. But it's hard. It's difficult to say like what the actual number is.
Thanks. I just hope if we do put one in, that we are able to phase it in a way that's going to keep compliance and make it work successfully.
So one of the issues that came up a couple of weeks ago in our meeting was that there are a number of intersections that do not detect bikes, and we don't know whether or not they're going to detect us. And so we don't know whether we need to drag our bicycle up onto the sidewalk, you know, go push the button. There was a question raised, could we have some sort of labels or some sort of, like, is there something that Arlington could do so that we know what we're facing as we stand at an intersection in the middle of the road waiting for a turn that's not happening?
Yeah, that's a hard one, but the and I did see the request to share a map of the recall locations and things like that, which we can certainly do. I just don't have it handy right this second, but we can get it to you rather quickly. Um, the issue with that is that we don't really want to dissuade somebody from pushing the button if it's not, you know, if it's not actually in recall. And the other thing is that the technology is kind of, you know, if there's a camera, it should be detecting you in the road. So if you see like a rectangular kind of oblong looking camera on top of the mast arm, it should be detecting you. That's one hint. The others are the automatic recall locations. If you're in a CBD, like a central business area, there's a lot of pedestrian traffic. Those signals are usually in recall also. So Roslyn, Ballston, major parts of Crystal City, trail crossings, that kind of stuff. So I would say, you know, if there's a specific location that you think really should be in recall, you know, there's a trail and you have to dismount and go, you know, to push a button that's behind another curb or whatever, you can feel free to send those into us and we can look at them and provide feedback. But as far as putting a sign up on the arm saying whether you need to push the button or not, there's nothing really in the MUTCD or anything else that kind of addresses that issue. There's no, some sensors, Dana, to your point, some sensors will, for example, again, it's so situational. You know, the sensors at, for example, Walter Reed and Arlington Mill that activate the little edge-lit signs that go up, they have a tiny little red light on the backside that'll turn on to let the person know that it's on. But unless you knew to look there, you know, you're not going to notice it. So it's kind of one of those things. They don't beep. They don't let you know. Yeah, there's no way of letting the bicyclist know that the call has been placed. I mean, I can look into that and see if there's other jurisdictions that are doing, I guess what you would call it as a confirmation light or some kind of signal.
So on that issue, I think the light or a notification is a nice to have. What a need to have, however, is for those lights that don't detect bikes. Many of us can't not. There is no way to trip the button short of getting off of our bikes, which isn't safe, especially because a lot of times kids are on the bikes. So, you know, those places where in the county that are on marked bike routes, I don't understand how the county justifies having something that is a marked bike route that's right outside of the school that doesn't detect bikes in the roadway and that's set on actuation.
Yeah.
Can you explain it, or is it just we care more about drivers?
No, I don't think that's I don't think that's where we're going with it. You know, it's more of, you know, it's hard to apply a blanket policy to the whole county. If there are situations where you're on a bikeway or you have a need for a particularly difficult button to push or whatever the issue is on that, you know, if you let us know, we can look at it and provide feedback. That way we can do it that way.
I've let you guys know a ton of times. I mean, Harrison Street on the way to Williamsburg at both Yorktown and Harrison. Sorry, Yorktown and Williamsburg. On the way to Williamsburg Middle School and Discovery Elementary. It's not possible if you're on a bike to hit those buttons. It's not safe even when it's possible because that would take you out of the lane to go hit the button. And then you just have to get back in the lane in front of all those cars, if there are cars, which isn't predictable. It's not the recommended movement. It's a marked bike route. It is the only marked bike route in the area. And it's the route to a school. I've reported it and reported, you know, I report it to every 6 months to a year. I get the same answer. And the answer is about drivers. It's not about safety.
Yeah, no, I understand your concern. I think that, you know, something like that, we do work with APS also on working with them to kind of suggest locations that need this. So, you know, if there's a marked bike route and it's on the way to a school, we can look at it and see if we can do, you know, recall all day, or if it makes sense to do portions of the day or whatever works. You know, we can work with APS and you all on that too. But it's just got to be.
That's great, but I don't go there for school hours. I go there for soccer, which is recreation. It's supported by the county. Schools are destinations for a lot more than just learning.
Gotcha.
And also, APS doesn't have a safe routes to schools coordinator, so I imagine you have a hard time coordinating with them.
They have a transportation liaison, or they did, but yes.
I don't believe they do anymore, and if they do, that person is doing multiple jobs.
Yeah, no, we do try to accommodate things like this. So if you have a specific, like, you know, route that you take that, you know, the signals are not in a good spot and you don't think there's a rebuild coming anytime soon and that kind of thing, then let us know and we can work with you on what works to get through the intersection, especially in places where we don't have the detection, you know.
So will you work? I mean, like what you said is very nice. It is contrary to my experience.
Well, you know, things are changing with Vision Zero and everything coming in. There's definitely a priority on safety, and you know, if it's something where we can facilitate a safe movement, where you know there's support for that, then we'll do that for sure. So if Williamsburg and Harrison is a place that, you know, a lot of people cross and they need to get to the push button, but they can't, and you know, we need to facilitate that bike route, then for sure, yeah.
But so why? So you know, we don't build a bridge where people swim across the river, right? Like, for one. And two, why does it matter if it's only me and my kids versus 20 kids? It's okay for me and my kids to be in an unsafe situation, but it's not okay if it were 20 of us. Like, this is a safety issue. You shouldn't be looking at numbers.
I understand what you're saying. And I guess what we can do is, especially for the areas around schools and things like that, we already are trying to work with APS, but we can kind of emphasize the target areas with them, especially on the HIN and through the hotspot analysis and things like that. So, when we're doing our corridor audits or things like that, this stuff can come up. It can get funneled through the Vision Zero cone of influence there.
You're still going to have the problem with the swimming across the river. Because if no one bikes because they don't think it's safe, then you're not going to see bike crashes. And that's not the goal. Anyway, I'll let others talk. It's just very disappointing that you guys, this does seem like one that lends itself very easily to a blanket rule. It would save you guys time. It would save us time. If it's a marked bike route, just make sure bikes can get, it is possible for bikes to get through intersections. And if that means the intersection's not upgraded, then put it on recall until you can upgrade it. Why make the people who are traveling in the most safe and sustainable manner bear all the burden? Thank you.
Thank you, Jillian. Pam has her hand up.
Yeah, I may have it up multiple times. I have a hard time with that button. I live in the National Landing area, and I have two questions about the pedestrian signals. I swear during COVID, a lot of them were put on automatic recall, and some of those are no longer on automatic recall. I also swear that some of our signals used to talk to you. They would say, light is on for crossing, blah, 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 blah. And now either they say nothing or they have this kind of obnoxious beep. But we've had a lot of questions from people with visual impairment. Like, what happened to these signals? That they're really important to them to know where they're going. And one of the many signals that I miss from automatic recall is at 13th and Joyce. Now 13th is actually kind of an alley there, but it has a fair amount of traffic in it, and it has a ton of pedestrians who cross Joyce there. It's a really big place to cross Joyce. Now there is a light automatically for drivers, whether there's a driver or not. The green light goes on for drivers, even when there's nobody there. But we have to push a button, and we wait forever to get a button. And it used to be automatic. So that's it.
Yeah, so you're correct that the APS, the operation of those may have changed recently, and that's because we were bringing, and this is a whole separate, a whole separate can of worms that we are trying to address with the DAC and different advocacy groups on that front. But technically, in the MUTCD and ProWag both, there are shalls, not shoulds or cans or woulds that dictate the operation of the push button. So we're trying to find ways around that, not around that, but we're trying to find ways to enhance the functionality without conflicting with the regulations. And so, like I said, some of the newer push buttons do have more functionality and things you can do with them. So we're trying to kind of broach that subject with the community at large, the people that are regularly using these push buttons, and they do like to hear the various information points at the intersection. But technically, in the MUTCD, it does say can't use words. You have to use the hammer tone, which is the obnoxious hammering that you're talking about. And then you're not allowed to do the countdown either. So so you're supposed to use a locator tone on the far side and the hammer tones for the walk, per all the guidance and the regulations in the MUTCD and ProWag. So it's tough because we've been, it's definitely a change in the way the buttons function, but we're trying to find some options for people to activate special functions on the push button that need it. So we're working on it is the long answer to that one, the short answer.
Yeah, I swear I read somewhere that you should be able to push the button and hold it in, and then it would activate the sound. So you're working on that?
So that only allows, yes. Yes, that is, you can activate different functions by holding it down. But that again, there's different views on that. Some people don't know about that. Um, and then there are limits, again, very explicit limits in the guidance about what you can do once you do that special activation. So it still doesn't allow for, the countdown. But you are allowed to do sort of a, hey, you're at this intersection waiting to cross this road, give you the information on the location. So we're trying to work on on a set of operating procedures that complies. And you will see if you leave Arlington, like if you go to Alexandria, Fairfax, most jurisdictions, they will operate with the hammer tone and the locator. We were kind of on our own there for a while, but yeah.
Okay. I've tried pushing the button, holding it, and nothing happens.
Right,
So,
because
so
we used to
I'm not
have
set yet.
we
Okay.
used to have the other one. And as far as Joyce and 13th goes, that really should not be activating for vehicles.
It sure is. Definitely is. And there's nobody
So,
there.
well, if you're in luck, because if it's a broken detector, then we'll put the ped movement up with it. So there you go. You get a
Oh, good.
bonus
Okay.
recall.
Do I need to report that, or I have reported it to you directly?
You have reported it.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate that.
I have your email, I think, so I'll put
I'm
you on
sure
the
you do.
ticket.
I'll be emailing you anyway.
I really want to put the Jeopardy theme song out. Pam's a winner tonight.
Yeah. And I'm always happy to talk through some of the stuff. It's good coming back here. I know I was here a couple of years ago, maybe 3 years ago, 2 years ago. But things change and there's different things we can help with, and hearing it firsthand is a lot easier than, not easier, but it's a different perspective, and I do appreciate sharing the things that aren't working right, to your point, Jillian. So I got my list so far, but if there's any other questions, feel free to follow up with David and you can relay it to me.
So here's an additional question on the BAC buttons. So we did not press them for a while during the worst of the pandemic, right? And then all of a sudden, when school started the next year, we had to push again. Do we need to have BAC buttons in Arlington? Not all jurisdictions do. Was it a total failure? I mean, from your perspective, was it a question that, that the numbers of cars shifted so much, or why do we have to have them? Because it seems like, at least for pedestrians and bicycle riders and scooters, they present so many challenges.
Yeah, so there are, I get what you're saying. I think where there is a push button, I guess that is the tough part, right? Where there is a push button might not mean you have to push it, but how do you know that, right? And how do you navigate that landscape? I think that the way that we really need to move forward on these is there's a general expectation of where you should and shouldn't have to push a button, as far as, if you're in a downtown area where there's a lot of pedestrians and things are happening all the time, you would not expect to push a button. You wouldn't walk through, downtown Manhattan and wait to push a button. There's 3,000 people in the corner with you, so why would you? And I think that where we're trying to emphasize is that we're willing to kind of be fluid with the implementation of the recall and things like that, but it's going to keep changing as things change, as long as we have different types of applications, right? So, and we have places where we might not see traffic or pedestrians all day except for a little bit. So making a blanket policy for the entire county is something that is going to be difficult to do, and especially since that also handcuffs you in what you can do as far as accommodating things like TSP or transit signal priority, giving float time so that we can move priorities around and things like that. So I think it's tough, because I understand the frustration, and if there was an easy answer, I think we would have done it, but you know, we obviously take all this back and we look at it and we're trying to constantly do it. And, you know, when I share the map, if you have suggestions, let me know and we can look at them.
So how about like on Columbia Pike, where I cross every day, you have to push the button at South Jefferson Street on Columbia Pike, and then you get 3 seconds maximum, and you usually cannot step into the street during that amount of time because the cars are still busy going through their red lights. So
Columbia Pike is in recall, or should be, for the entire stretch up to Washington Boulevard.
not, at least not on the side, on the west side of it,
It
of
should
the
be.
intersection.
Yeah, Columbia Pike is supposed to be in recall for the entire stretch from the county line all the way to Washington Boulevard.
The whole of Columbia Pike.
Yes,
And that
Ooh.
includes the side streets. You don't need it to.
correct.
Definitely not true.
Okay, so we need to be reporting it regularly then.
Well, let me go back and, you know, I'll pretty up the map and get it so that it's easier to read and maybe put a list on it, because right now I think it just has the dots. And if you don't see the map every day, you might not, you know exactly which intersections they are. So we can kind of put a list together, get you all a map, and then if you have suggestions or, you know, places that you think really want us to look at again, we can do that.
Yeah, that would be wonderful to see the maps and to know, like, also when, you know, if there are certain hours where you have to push a button. That seems to be the case, like Fairfax Drive and Wakefield. Someone said that when they go through, it's on recall, and yet when I go through, I'm always like going down the block to press the button on my bike and then turning around on the sidewalk, and
No, that should be in recall.
it should.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So I will send you the map. This is a good you know, touch point. So I can send that to you all. And if you're seeing stuff different in the field, it could be for a variety of reasons, but at least nobody from our side is intentionally rolling back any of the recalls. So, you know, if we see something that's not operating the way it should, we'll put it right back.
Okay. Fantastic. So do we have a way to be in touch with you?
Yes, I can send the map through David, and then if you all want to just do a comprehensive list as the BAC, PAC, you know, that's probably 90% of the requesters anyway. So that would help me if you funneled it through like a single request. But if you don't want to do that, you can always use the report a problem portal and that kind of thing. But if you have a comprehensive list and you give it to, you know, David, would you mind passing it through?
I don't mind. I'll note that my colleague Elwin is on the call, and Elwin's officially the liaison to the bike committee, but we'll share the wealth. We can we'll tag team these.
That would be wonderful. I mean, then we can focus, you know, on our own time and also some meeting time, coming up with our collective suggestions and observations based on what we see on the map.
Yeah, it might help for you to see kind of where it's supposed to be, because maybe some of this is coming from a miscommunication or it's not operating as intended.
And I'm going to take the prerogative to just say a word here. The work that Josh and his colleagues do is incredibly technical and complicated, and there's not perfect seamless communication between them on the operations side and the capital project side, the planning side. So we all understand that the people walking and cycling are on the front lines of what's an imperfect system and not protected by 5,000 pounds of plastic and steel and glass. So everybody gets that. And I also want to reflect that in my view, I've been around for a while in the county. In my view, the last few years has really been a sea change in paying attention to issues like this. The whole Vision Zero approach and new leadership up and down through TE&O and the bureau that I work in, the Transportation Planning and Capital Projects Bureau. Not perfect. Nobody's pretending it's perfect, but we're pretty responsive and we're doing good stuff. And we appreciate and value and want people to be cycling and be walking and be rolling in wheelchairs safely and getting where they want to go reliably and all of that. So I think most of this conversation tonight, all of this conversation tonight has been really helpful and productive and civil. And I just want to say good job, everybody. And especially to Josh to come and sit and put forth for an hour a whole bunch of technical stuff that, engineers go to school for a long time to learn how to do this stuff. And it's all changing. I mean, this thing with detectors and automatic sensors and cameras, this is not old school traffic engineering. This is brand new. And I want to salute the colleagues down the hall in the TE&O who are doing a great job, I think. So
Thanks.
that's my sermon.
Nope, definitely appreciate it, and thanks for all the input. If there's anything else, I'm not going anywhere. So if you have any other feedback or you want questions or things like that. Jillian's question, can we put the map online? Maybe. I don't know right now, but let me get it together and see what format it's in, and then we'll talk about it, because it's going to be changing a lot. So it's going to be pretty fluid.
I have one more question while we still have you. Those high-tech like sensors and signals, I mean, you were giving us some prices for signals generally, and they're crazy expensive. Do the high-tech ones that do more things, do they cost a whole lot more?
It depends really. It's like, for example, putting it on the signal. If you put it up overhead as a camera, every time they repave, you don't have to replace it, right? So the old school, the loops that are traditionally used in detection, every time they pave, you have to replace them. And with the newer environmental regulations about the wash off from the saw cut process, it actually winds up costing quite a bit of money to replace the loops anyway. So over time, no, it doesn't cost more or less, but it's still significant. It's kind of like you're investing up front for a longer term solution that's a little bit more flexible too, with more functionality. So I'd say it's not out of the realm of realistic on a normal maintenance of replacement of loops. Usually nowadays, for example, if Water Sewer Streets repaves a street and we can put the video detection up, depending on the interior, like if the conduit's in good shape underground, if the cabinet's able to accept the new technology, we will go ahead and just swap it out. But it really depends on what shape the underground infrastructure's in. So a lot of times we can't, because these signals are so old that you can't even pull anything.
That's fascinating. Thank you so much.
Sure.
And thank you for this presentation. It has been really, really helpful. And I look forward to future communications in both directions.
Thank you.
I think it died again, but have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you, Josh.
Okay, next up, we have Ilana Kreinen, and who will help us figure out our legislative priorities for the year. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me. You got it right the second time. Ilana Kreinen. I am our legislative liaison at the county, and I am really looking forward to meeting with many of our commissions this cycle, I guess you could say, for the 2024 legislative session. It begins in January, and it is a long session, meaning it goes 8 weeks. It will end in March, hopefully. There will be a new 2-year budget that is, presented by the governor in late December. And so I really enjoy getting the opportunity to talk with our commissions, hear about what your top priorities are. I know that BAC and PAC like to do theirs together. So if you want to do, a total of 6, you're welcome to do that. We usually say about 3 per commission. So if you want to come up with your top 6, that's totally fine with me. And, this upcoming session, we don't know who's going to be in power in the General Assembly. We have the Senate, all 40 seats are up, and in the House, all 100 seats are up for election. That takes place in November. And it's going to be really close one way or the other. We have a significant amount of retirements taking place. So there's going to be about 50 new members in the General Assembly total. So that's kind of what I got. I'm happy to, do this collaboratively, answer questions, anything that you might have if you want, some thoughts on, what priorities might be more successful than others, happy to do that too. I can tell you that we are going to have a Vision Zero piece in our legislative package. We had a piece last year in it, basically just acknowledging and advocating for more Vision Zero policies for traffic and pedestrian and bike safety. And so that will remain in our package. But beyond that, I'm really open to any ideas or any refinement of that priority. Hi, Cynthia.
Hey, I just had a question about the timeline, because you won't know until November sort of who's in power and what's even like feasible. At what point do you need the priorities from our committees, given that the priorities are going to be, perhaps a little bit different in terms of what's imaginable or what's achievable depending on who wins?
Such a great question. So our timeline right now, so I'm going to work backwards, right? So we have the election on November 7th, and we are presenting the package to the board. I'm presenting the package to the board on November 12th. So we have a little bit of wiggle room should the election go one way or the other. And then because session starts in January, we then have to do adoption in December. So we've chosen to at least put the presentation and the adoption post-election so we can make any, last minute changes as we need. But unfortunately, because of that, I need to collect a lot of the priorities well ahead of the November meeting. And right now we have the deadline set as I think September 29th, that Friday, but I'm more than happy to, give another 2 weeks. But unfortunately, I'm probably going to need to know most of the priorities ahead of the election. What I would recommend doing, and this is kind of what I'm anticipating, is that we will have a divided government again, whether that be, the Senate flips Democrat or the Senate remains Democrat, the House flips Republican, or vice versa. Like, we'll see it one way or the other, because then that at least, I think it's unlikely that we end up with Republicans in both the House and the Senate control. It's possible, but it could happen. And so that way we can only get better from having, a split government versus if we get Democrats in both the House and the Senate in charge. And so my recommendation is to do it as it currently is, as if one House is Democrat and one body is Democrat and one body is Republican. And if we need to adjust from there, we can either go, more conservative in terms of, protecting what's already there if we end up with a Republican control. And if we end up with Democrat control, we can get a little more creative.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you. Jillian, I see you have your hand up.
Yes, thank you. One of the hats I wear is that I was on a team that consulted with VDOT on legislative, like Commonwealth legislative issues.
Mm-hmm.
And I won't bore you with all the details, but the bottom line of that process was we think that VDOT is amenable to 2 changes in law that are specific to biking, but they would help people walking.
Okay.
One is to change the law to allow people biking on the street to go when the leading pedestrian interval is on.
Okay.
So for bikes to go on the LPI is the shorthand way to say that. That makes it more attractive to bike on the street. So it's good for people walking, it's good for people biking. It's a safety issue. So that would be great to have on Arlington's list. Another one is biking side by side. It's a personal priority of mine because I lead the bike bus to Escuela Key. So I have all these kids biking together. And you know, when biking with kids, you want to be side by side so you can have the adult on the outside. There was I won't bore you. There was the law change and it changed back, and basically VDOT is open to changing it back again. And I think that would be an improvement. Those are the two things that sort of came out of that process. And then the other thing that I think Arlington should explore is there's lots of evidence from around the country that e-bike rebates go a long way to reducing car trips. And that has an impact on safety. It has an impact on sustainability. It has an impact on municipal finances. And there's a couple ways to get at this. I think it's a little overly optimistic to think Virginia would do it on its own, but maybe legislation that got Dominion power to do it, or legislation that enabled municipalities to do it would work. Oh, and the last one on one of our favorite topics, maintenance of transportation when there's construction and that blocks sidewalks or bike lanes or trails and somehow screws up. Arlington often says that they don't have the authority to issue fines or to do sort of interim steps. I'm not sure how true that is, but this is more of a sort of homework of what authority would Arlington need to be better at enforcing MOTs. But when there's construction and then the construction ends up blocking things, what would they need to be able to find the construction companies to get better behavior? Okay, that's it for me. Thank you so much.
Awesome. One
Nice to meet
question
you.
for you I have. So I remember the LPI bill from last year. And I remember you worked really closely with Senator Favola on it. Is she planning to reintroduce that bill again this year, or?
I don't know, but I'm happy to circle back with you when I do know
Okay.
more.
Sounds good. And I'm happy to talk with her too, because I remember like both she had one and so did Senator DeSteff in Virginia Beach, and then they ended up combining it, and then things got complicated, and then all of a sudden there wasn't a bill. So
Yeah. And a big part of that was like VDOT was like, we're against this. And everyone sort of looked at VDOT like, why? And which led to this process over the summer and yada, yada, yada. So I think we've all worked out our differences.
That's amazing. Okay, great. So I definitely feel comfortable that we can put that in. I think the other ones are going to be like the creativity of can we get more conservative? Can we get more creative on, what happens with the House? But I think we can, if that is one of the priorities that comes out of backpack tonight, then I think we can probably get that one in there.
Well, thanks.
You're welcome. Thank you. Pamela?
Hi, thank you.
Hi.
And hi, and thank you, Jillian, for your comments. And I have two suggestions. One is that Cynthia tell us the 5 that the BAC talked about last month, which basically are similar to what we had last year. And my second request, some of those overlap with what Jillian was just talking about. And my second request, is there anyone on the PAC that has any ideas that are separate from those? Thank you.
Do you need me to pull up your letter from last year?
Or Jill, Cynthia, do you want to read them, or do you want me to read them?
I can mention the ones from last year,
okay,
if that would be helpful. And I certainly hope we can repeat some of them. But just real quick, one was include the bikes in the legislation for the lead pedestrian intervals. And I think that Jillian mentioned that one. The second one was allow local control for implementation of automated speed enforcement, red light running, parking violations, and other traffic safety issues. The third was create a transportation fund for bike ped safety, safe routes to school, trails, and related safety initiatives. The fourth, require side underrun guards on trucks. These are side rails between the axles on large trucks to prevent pedestrians, bicycle riders, and motor vehicles from being swept under the trucks. They seem so sensible to me. I would love to include that. And then number 5, remove the contributory negligence law, which exists only in Virginia, Alabama, North Carolina, and Maryland. And it means that a bicycle rider or a pedestrian who is hit by a motor vehicle is barred from any recovery if she contributed to the crash in any way. So that's pretty backwards. So those were the 5 from last year. And then a couple of weeks ago, we discussed a few others, and I think most of them were raised already by Jillian. Safety stops was another one. I don't know if Jillian or anyone else wants to mention that.
I can talk. We did talk to VDOT about that, and basically we're still doing research on the safety stops. That's the idea that someone on a bike, when you come up to a stop sign, would be required to slow, but not completely come to a stop. Just treat it as a yield sign, basically. And VDOT is still getting comfortable with that. They're still looking at data. I think it's a good idea, but in the grand scheme of priorities, I would deprioritize that one just because we haven't quite gotten VDOT on board, but we're working in that direction.
Awesome. So it sounds like, so the leading pedestrian interval, I'm gonna add it to the package, also check with Senator Favola on that bill. And then the one where you're talking about creating that transportation fund for safe routes to schools, Danica Rome actually introduced a bill about that last year. And so I'm happy to check with her and see if she's planning to reintroduce a bill like that. I can tweak our Vision Zero package to make sure it talks about funding in that way, so that way we can get that that priority into the package. And then for the biking side by side, the e-rebates, the local control for red light cameras, actually the local control for red light cameras, I'm checking with our police on that right now. And then the other issues I can bring up with our counterparts. I know that Alexandria mentioned that they had thought about the e-bike rebates, and so I'm happy to check with them to see what they're doing on that issue. But I definitely think we can get a couple of these into the package and hopefully get some legislation on the books for it.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
You're so welcome.
Does anyone else want to? There's Dina.
Yeah, the red light cameras, the one thing you're probably going to, you're going to get pushback, because we aren't using all the ones we have now, because it's apparently inconvenient for the police department, or, my words, not theirs. So when you're talking to them, figure out why they're not doing everything they're currently allowed to do before we, in the process of asking for more. Thank you.
You're welcome. Randy?
I just want to say, for what it's worth, that I am opposed to the safety stop idea. In fact, I think the name for it itself is outrageous. I don't see how that adds to our safety in any way. And all it does is to emphasize to the motorists that bicycle riders don't follow the rules. I think it would be a disaster. So, Jillian, I hope it doesn't work.
Thanks, Randy,
Randy,
for
I'm happy to talk with you offline. There's a lot of data out of Delaware about how it does actually increase safety, and a lot of it is in reducing the time it takes for a person on a bike to get through an intersection.
How about for this year, while we clear up, the data piece with VDOT and everyone gets maybe on the same or similar page on this, while we do more, discussions on it, I won't include that one for this year. And then we can revisit it next year. Pamela?
What are the chances of the removing contributory negligence? Which is certainly a hot issue for cyclists and pedestrians.
So
It's so
I
unfair.
think that is one that's gonna, I think, come down to, do we have a Democratic House and a Democratic controlled Senate? I think that one, if I remember correctly, Senator Stanley, back when the Republicans got control of the House, reintroduced that bill to put that back on the books because it was reversed, and now it's back to, contributory negligence is back on the books. And so I think that does not even stand a chance unless we get Democrats in control of both the House and the Senate, unfortunately.
Okay, keep it in your secret pocket just in case.
I will. I definitely will.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
So when we send you a list, should we include it like in a special category in the magic pocket, just in case?
Sure, that's totally fine. You can the way I would phrase it is that I would not phrase it necessarily as like, if the Democrats get control or whatnot. I would phrase it as like other priorities should, circumstances allow for additional consideration, like some broad language, because remember that your letter is, public. It will be public foyable material that gets posted with the minutes of the board meeting and whatnot. So I just caution that you are careful on the language, just because I don't want you all to put yourself in a bad position.
Were there any other of the topics that we raised that you think we might put in that category, or everything else you think is possibly fine?
I think the e-bike rebates could potentially be in that category as well.
Oh, that's too bad.
I know. I think part of it comes down to it kind of fits in a similar category to like electric vehicle rebates. And as we've seen, like when I've talked with our transportation commission, like the Republicans are less focused on electric vehicles, electric bikes, electric anything right now. And that's for a multitude of reasons. In rural, mostly it comes down to, a lot of them represent a lot of rural areas, and they don't have this need, this desire. And so even if you, toss it back to the locality and give localities permission to offer this kind of rebate, they still look at it as an issue that's very much an urban, more democratic area leaning issue. And they just don't necessarily want to, go down that path. So that's why I think the e-bike rebates may be in that category as well.
It is just invaluable to have you come talk to us about these things. It really makes a difference. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. I'm sorry I don't have better news. I wish I did.
I have one more that is probably in that category, or not even there, which is car registration fees.
Okay.
Some of us were so excited when DC announced that larger vehicles would be paying more to register their cars, and I don't think it's possible to do that in Virginia. I mean, from what I read like a year or two ago, it was not in the rules. But is that something that would, if we got the right circumstances with the votes, maybe that would be possible?
Maybe. I need to do some more research on that because I think that goes into some additional like the higher cost, you'd have to have a place to put it. And that itself, right? So you're collecting additional money. Where does that additional money go is a whole nother can of worms to open up. So it maybe, it goes to, a transportation fund for safety. That's, one option. Other people could want it to go towards, metro accessibility, and that's another can of worms. So I think that you have two issues there. You have the issue of, can we charge more for cars that have larger capacity? And then you also have the issue of, what do you do with the extra funding?
So better to leave that one off for now?
I think so, but I can ask my regional counterparts if they've been hearing about this too and get their opinions on it. And I don't want to say no, but I don't want to say yes, because it is a good idea.
Yeah, I mean, and it's more wear and tear on the roads from the heavy vehicles, and obviously the safety hazard. And
Right.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem. I think the thing that I'm thinking of is, like, a lot of rural areas, they tend to have larger cars because the roads aren't as good. They need more four-wheel drive. And so they may see this as like a total attack on them. And I don't think the Republicans would go for that. But
So the other way of approaching it then would be, could Arlington get permission to do that, specifically in Arlington?
yeah, so I think because car registration is done statewide, you'd have to do one or the other.
Okay.
Because otherwise it'd be like, okay, Arlington is basically, they would see it as placing a tax on vehicles if they're over a certain size, and I'm not sure that would fly either. So I think it's one of those all or nothing issues, but I think it's something, I'll ask my regional counterparts, I'll kind of get some of their thoughts on this. And sometimes it just takes a few years for people to really marinate with an idea, and then they like it, like Jillian can attest to with the LPI.
What about the permit, the Arlington permit? $35 that we have to spend. It used to be a sticker, and it's not a sticker anymore. Could that be by weight? Just an idea, just something to think about.
That is an interesting idea. I can look into that, because there must be something in state code that allowed Arlington to do that. And it was a 35X permit, you said?
No,
Ilana,
$35.
$35.
when that was activated, it was called the decal fee. And it was
not sticker. Yeah.
And it was let's call it earmarked. It was earmarked specifically to do some bike ped projects. And then eventually it got smushed around and lost that identity. But if you look into or ask people about the decal fee, you'll uncover that history.
Thanks, David. I appreciate the background there. That's really helpful. Okay. Let me do some digging on that. Because if that is a possibility, maybe if we already have the explicit permission to do something around that, then that's another conversation that would be had with the county board, which I don't think that I am involved in. But I can do some digging and kind of figure out what I think works best. All right, and I look forward to getting your letter, but right now the deadline is September 29th, but I'm more than happy to give, an additional 2 weeks if you need more time to kind of get the letter written and your thoughts all squared away.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
You're so very welcome.
This is really helpful. Lots of great insights that I hadn't even imagined. So thank you.
Yes,
Be in
and
touch.
of course, sounds great. Thank you all for your service to the county. It's great to see all of you, and I hope you have a good rest of your evening.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Yolanda.
Thank you. Bye.
It looks like we're right upon 9 o'clock here.
That's true. Can I interject a couple of things? One is Mary Delau from Bike and Walk Arlington. I left her off the agenda. That was my oversight, and I wonder if Mary might want to catch people up for a few minutes. And then there was some committee business I know on the PAC side that could probably wait until next month. And then I have one little short item I would like to add to.
Can I just mention one thing? I think that Pam had mentioned there was a woman that at the beginning of our meeting wanted to say something. We should probably give her an opportunity to talk,
Natasha.
just so we won't hold her on the entire time.
Natasha, are you still here?
We might have lost Natasha.
Natasha.
Pam, you seemed to have a familiarity with what she wanted to talk about. Can you?
Yeah, I was approached by Arthur Fox in ARCA, who's been one of their main transportation people. He was also their president for years and years and years. And she contacted him, and he contacted me. This is 28th and Army Navy Drive. And I'm assuming that they are literally talking about that intersection and not something closer around the corner where there is no crosswalk. This is getting it through Arthur that they feel unsafe crossing it's 28th Street because of all the traffic that is turning on and off from Army Navy Drive. 28th is increasingly a cut-through street. So it's a way of avoiding both Glebes and Arlington Ridge Road. So fast drivers going through and turning both ways, avoiding all these major roads. I went out and looked at it there, and I think I may have copied you on it, David. There is a very faint crosswalk at the corner of Arlington Ridge and 28th. It's worn. You can barely see it. And there is a stop sign on 28th Street, which is ignored by all the drivers. There's no stop, yield, or anything on Army Navy Drive. So, the cars just whiz around. I think minimally it would be nice to repaint the crosswalk and preferably with something bolder. They put in some wonderful crosswalks at 26th and 28th. I don't remember if they're ladder or zebra, but they're big and bold and wide and wonderful. And even just doing that would help. It'd be nice to have some watch out for pedestrian signs and bikes, because it's really a dangerous area. So I don't know. She said she had multiple issues. I don't know what they all were, but I sent Arthur those suggestions, which he forwarded to her, I think. So I'm not quite sure how she wanted to follow up with us. I can reach out to Arthur and say, hey, she was here for the meeting. We couldn't let her talk at the beginning because we already had a packed agenda. We didn't know she was coming. And when we had time at the end, she was gone. So.
Well, I did know she was coming. I didn't know what the issue was, and I'm sorry if I didn't put your earlier comment to me and her presence together. But I'll follow up on that.
Okay.
I don't know exactly what to do. And
Can I say one thing?
Yeah.
Yeah, and the big deal about 28th Street, you got two schools and you got kids crossing, from the apartments there in what used to be called Arlandria, going over to Gunston and going into Oak Ridge. And it's as if you know, the school, the mere fact of children being there is being ignored. So yeah, it's not a good deal. 28th Street is stinky.
Well,
Is
and,
this
and it's a
something-
complete street.
Sorry. I just wanted to ask, is this something that also could be referred to the Neighborhood Complete Streets Commission as well? Is something that they might be able to take some action on, especially if the county doesn't have funds to take this on right now?
Well, there is a complete street project for 18th Street. It doesn't go as far as Arlington Ridge. It doesn't go as far as Arlington Ridge Road in one side. It doesn't go as far as Army Navy on the other. It goes, I think, from Lang over to 26th. And it's one of many complete street projects where they did not put in any bike lanes. And, you know, it is imperfect. It's a very tight space. It would be a wonderful place for cyclists and pedestrians because it is flat. It is beautiful. There's trees, but it is not a safe place.
All right, Pam,
I
I'm
put
going to
some
be in
stuff in
touch
the
with
chat
you
about
about this. It's not a set of intersections and streets I'm really familiar with. Up at the top of the hill, I've looked into some questions that Andrea Walker made me aware of a couple of months ago. There's some real constrained right of way, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But crosswalks are pretty easy in the scheme of things. So let me see what I can.
Yeah, that would be great.
And
It needs repainting anyway. You can build.
And Jillian's comment is that we might need a snake crossing sign there. She saw some giant snake at that on the street. I didn't know we had 5-foot-long snakes in Arlington. Anyway, so I want to be mindful of people's time. Is Mary still with us? Yes.
I'm here. I could be really quick. So we were at the fair in August. We had the electric ride experience. I saw Cynthia there. Dana helped us. Pam was there. David came by. So we engaged with over 1,000 people from Friday through Sunday giving e-bike test rides. It was 1,102 according to our records. And we had partnerships with Conti's and also with Pedigo. We had our first electric trike ever for test rides at the fair, finally. So I thought it was a great day. A lot of people who came and rode the bikes had never ridden an e-bike before. And so they could ride the Cosmo from Capital Bike Share. And we had our e-bike buying guide, which is now on the Bike Arlington website. So we had that in time for the fair. And we have our new walkabouts too that we redid for 2023. I don't know if I've been in this meeting yet to show them. So this exists now too. And the valet, which I'm excited about, two-wheel valet, was with us over the weekend. And they said they parked 380 bikes from Friday through Sunday. And that was a 60% increase from last year. And the other data point is that they had to reconfigure the space because they had so many bikes that had like child seats or bigger bikes that they couldn't put them on the regular racks. So they had to move things around. So I thought that was really good. So other things we have coming up on Walk and Roll to School Day on October 4th, I'm working with Kevin Treacle to resuscitate the little free library that Walk Arlington made a few years ago when we did a story walk at Campbell Elementary. And all it needs is to be cleaned up and get a new knob on the door. And we're going to try to use this as an incentive item for participation at different elementary schools. And whoever wins, we haven't decided yet how we'll define winning, will get the library for the year. And he said he'll try to get a post put in the ground and like mount it permanently. And in the past, it's been at Campbell and Randolph, and it's just been sitting on a table. It hasn't really been mounted properly. So I think that's the plan. So I'm working on the library. And then we're having tentatively a PAL volunteer recruitment event on October 26th at Shirlington Library. So I'm working on that. We have about 25 active PALs now. So we're trying to build them up. And then the next big outreach event is Lighten Up Arlington on November 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. and we will be on the trail giving out lights and other information. And we are also at the moment reprinting the Arlington loop maps that are on the trails. So I'm working to get those updated and redone. And then at some point in the next few months, I'll be coming to you, the BAC, for help updating the bicycle comfort level map in time for Bike to Work Day in the spring. And so that probably won't be right away, but it's on my radar. And I know Dana was marking it up and showing it to Henry at the fair, and I didn't see, I don't know what happened to that map, but I know Dana was thinking about it, so I'm sure you all would have good input on it. So that's all for me.
Can I have 2 minutes? Is that okay? I know we're running a little late. Can I have 2 minutes?
Sure.
We got two items. One, I spent time today delivering some bike racks to Kenmore Middle School. We have some bike racks left over from a transit project that happened at Ballston Mall, and it's been completed now, and the temporary bike racks were taken away and permanent ones were installed. And I've been dealing with Kevin Treacle, who's the transportation fellow for APS. And Kenmore School rose to the top. I think they need bike racks at Swanson Middle School out in Westover. There's kids' bikes are locked to the chain link fence. It's not a good look. And apparently, I don't want to get anybody in trouble, but apparently the person at Swanson who makes that call didn't want any more bike racks. These are the racks that are attached to rails. So they're like a module. You put it down and you get 4 new U racks, and you can park 8 bikes. The kids can park a dozen bikes on there. So anybody has kids at Swanson Middle School, talk to the people in charge and get them to request a couple of racks, and they could have some more bike racks. The main thing I wanted to mention was folks on this call know about the bicycle-friendly community sweepstakes, let's call it. It's not a competition. It's like a report card. And every 4 years, the county applies to the League of American Bicyclists bicycle-friendly community program to be scored, to be ranked. And we've been a silver level bicycle community since 2011. It's a monster undertaking. I've been through it 4 times now, 2011, 15, 19, and now this year. And it grew. It's a 98-page long application, and you have to scour all your colleagues across the county and all the community contacts to ask them to help. And people on this call helped, and they want to know how many of this and how many of those and how do you do this and how do you do that. So we made our best effort. Now the league is coming back to us and asking us to help spread the word to the community for folks like are on this call to tell the league how we're doing. Because now they've heard from staff, they've heard from the county how we think we're doing. They want to hear from citizens how you think we're doing. And I'd like you to be kind. Anyway, there's an online survey. Our people would call it a feedback form. It's not a survey. It's not a scientific survey. And I have shared this with Nate Graham and our folks in outreach and communications, because it seems to me a little bit bizarre that if people who are doing the scoring of our application want our help to do their promotion, because they can make it part of how good a grade we get. Anyway, it's a little bizarre. So we have pros in the communication and engagement side, and we're asking them to help us do this. But I'm going to put the link in the chat. It's an online survey. I'm going to copy it and I'm going to paste it. And there we go. So anybody who's interested can go to this website and engage with the League of American Bicyclists and tell them how you think Arlington's doing to be a more bicycle-friendly community. And we're going to do something more. I don't know exactly what shape it's going to take because this arrived in my inbox yesterday. I shared it with Nate and the communications pros today, and they're going to want to do something, and I don't know exactly what it is yet. Anyway, That's it for me.
Is there a deadline for
Oh,
sending
there
comments?
is. There is. They have until their deadline is until the October 20th. So
Okay.
plenty of time. And so this group, overall, they rate or rank several hundred communities across the country. They're not all in the same 4-year cycle that we are, but say they get 120 or 30 applications this year. That's 120 or 30 applications times 100 pages. That's like gobs of review work. That's budgets, it's plans, it's records, it's data. Anyway, it's a big undertaking, and they are welcoming and asking us to invite people into the feedback process. That's it. Thank you very much.
I don't see it in the chat here. Did it?
Oh, didn't it? Did I not send it? Oh, there. I hadn't pushed the right button yet, Eric. I'm sorry. Should see it now.
Okay.
There we go.
And do you want us to promote it beyond the backpack, like in our communities, or no?
I'll leave that up
You
to
can
you.
think about
Pam.
that.
I'll leave that up to you. I've asked my professional colleagues about how we should handle this, and the county has an engagement process, and I don't want to freelance it. You can do what you want, and it's a public survey, so you can do what you
And
want.
the county engagement people are not going to be putting it out.
I don't know yet.
Oh, okay.
It landed on their lap today. It landed on my lap yesterday.
Well, if they are going to be doing something, then let us know. Then that would be the answer.
There you go.
Yeah, good.
I think I did it 4 years ago, and I don't remember. I don't remember if it was brought to our committee or if I was asked to do it, but I remember doing it before.
Well, good. I don't. This seemed like a new thing to me this year. They really reworked the application this year. In the past, this is a group that promotes the 5 E's: enforcement, education, encouragement, evaluation, and education. Well, they've changed the 5 E's this year. So enforcement has been really downgraded and equity has taken its place. So the whole application has a huge equity component. How are you doing this? How are you doing that? How are you reaching out to people who are not typically engaged? So I feel like we did pretty good on that. We have a very serious equity, diversity, inclusion approach coming from the county manager on down, etc. So we'll see. Our engagement process is very sophisticated. I think it follows best practices nationwide. So we'll see. They're going to be scoring this thing between now and December. They'll announce results in December, and we'll see. There we go. Thank you.
Thank you. And David, please capture the chat and the list of attendees and send me a link to whatever as soon as you can. This was a great meeting, as always. I love this.
This was great. Thank you all.
And Joshua did great, and Ilana did great. She's such a wonderful resource. She has all this knowledge that we don't have. You know, what could work, what can't work, and give us some direction very tactfully.
Yeah, she's inside the sausage making machine.
Yeah, in a good way. Well, thank you, everybody, and we finally get to quit at 9:18.
Okay. I'm going to push the button then again. Thank you all. Good night.
Does Cynthia have anything else she wants to add before we close?
No, I was just going to see if Pam, since she probably still has a quorum for the PAC, if you wanted to do a vote. We did circulate the minutes from the summer meetings, so there are still 15 people here if you wanted to.
It's up to everybody. I mean, we could do it in a minute.
Yeah.
I request, I have a motion to approve where are my minutes? This PAC meeting. All right. This is the PAC minutes from May 10th, 2023. They were distributed through the PAC Google group. Can I have a motion to approve them?
I so move.
Andrea, any discussion? Okay. Anyone against the minutes? Okay, everybody is for it. Thank you. All right. Next, can I have a motion to approve the minutes from the joint backpack meeting of June 5th, 2023? May I have a motion?
I so move.
And any discussion? And anyone have any changes, corrections, or complaints about them? Raise your issues now. I did make a couple edits on both sets of minutes. They're very minor things. Okay, I hear no objections, so both sets of minutes are approved. Thank you so much. Then we don't have to wait another month.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you so much for writing up those backpack minutes, because I know how much work it is.
I have this one is always a challenge. Who are these people? And so it's really important to have a list of all the attendees. Thank you. Thank you. I always a pleasure, Cynthia. Always a pleasure, David. Always a pleasure to all of you.
Okay.
Thank you for hanging in there. I'm leaving.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Good night, all.
Good night.
Good night.